at the end of the Cold War, then when there was this ambition to have a common European home, a greater Europe in Moscow, there were a lot of opportunities there not taken. Again, you were there then negotiating or advising, sorry, Poland. You advised the Soviet Union under Gorbachev. You advised Russia under Yeltsin. What is it that they wanted, and vis-a-vis what the Americans wanted? Why wasn't it possible to essentially reach a mutually acceptable post-Cold War settlement?
I began advising in Poland in 1989, and Poland, of course, uh, entered into a coalition government of President Jaruzelski, who was the Soviet-backed president, with the Solidarity Movement, which was the anti-communist movement in 1989 to form a government. And I was very much involved in that and involved in the economics around that. And when it came to the economics, the point was that Poland was broke. It had no foreign exchange reserves. Its currency was collapsing. There was very high inflation. There were shortages of goods. So as a macroeconomist, I was able to devise a program of stabilization that I recommended to the Polish government and to the European governments. And those recommendations, broadly speaking, were endorsed. And from a practical point of view, Poland was able to end the high inflation, stabilize the currency, and begin, after about a year, a process of economic growth that would last for the following 30 years. So it was a very successful transition from a very, very fraught financial situation. And the tools to do that are rather well known if one studies such crises or has been involved in solving them, as I had been. When it came to the Soviet Union, the same situation applied, although on a scale that was much larger. So I recommended a similar package, but on a much larger scale. Those recommendations were flatly rejected by the West. The same kind of economic policy that was working for Poland was turned down by the U.S. government. 25, 30 years later, I read the minutes of the White House meeting in which it was turned down. I was shocked by the flippancy and the brazenness and the ignorance of the participants at that meeting. So there was naturally the element of Machiavellianism and the element of bravado of the winners in the Cold War as they saw it. But there was also, Glenn, just stupidity of people who understood nothing about economic stabilization, understood nothing about what it was that Gorbachev's government needed, and so on. So the incompetence always needs also to be highlighted in this. Well, it turned out that both for the Soviet case and even after the Soviet Union ended for the Russian case, the West was completely uninterested in even the most routine kind of financial support to end a deep crisis. At the same time, I heard directly from President Gorbachev and from President Yeltsin how what they wanted was the same as what Poland wanted: an end to the divisions, a united European home. President Yeltsin's favorite word was normal. Russia should be normal. No more revolutions, no more Bolshevism, no more divisions, no more Cold War, just normal. But the United States wasn't having peace. The U.S. was having hegemony. That's a difference. Peace means you deal with your counterparts with respect and even help in the short term. Hegemony means you crush your counterparts because your aim is to dominate. And that's what we got instead. That's why NATO enlargement was on the table when Russia was not only no threat, it was saying exactly the opposite. It was asking to join NATO. It was wanting to have a common European security. There was no threat, but the U.S. wasn't interested in no threat. The U.S. was interested in dominance. And that's what I witnessed at the time.
Well, I was going to ask, how do you think now the Ukraine war has reshaped the global order? Because the world doesn't look, well, it looks very different than it did only 4 years ago.
One of the interesting chapters in Zbigniew Brzezinski's 1997 book, The Grand Chessboard, asks the question, as Europe and NATO push eastward and surround Russia, what will Russia do? And Brzezinski devotes a chapter to this. And he asks, well, Russia might agree, buckle in, or Russia might resist. And could it form an alliance with China, for example, or with Iran? And Brzezinski analyzes all of this, and he declares very confidently, there's no chance that Russia will do anything but accept its European vocation. Russia has no other option. That proved to be decisively wrong. Russia said, okay, goodbye. We turn towards Eurasia. We turn towards China, which, by the way, is a great economic fit. Russia and China are very complementary economies, as Russia and Europe were, by the way. That was a good fit, too. It was good for Germany and good for Russia, that fit. It was destroyed by the West through its 20 rounds of sanctions and so forth. But Russia said, we will look in a different direction towards India, towards China, towards Central Asia, towards Western Asia, towards Africa. That's the world that is being built right now. So the U.S. thought, we're the hegemon, we'll run the show. But in fact, what we have is a bully in the United States, still very violent and very powerful, no doubt, and a vassal Europe, utterly confused, demoralized, and divided. But the US and Europe and Britain and Japan and Korea somewhat, and Australia somewhat, and New Zealand together constitute about 12% of the world population. Maybe, if you're the most expansive, maybe up to 15% of the world population. What is taking shape is a multipolar world that increasingly the other 85% of the world population say, what is this U.S. bullying? What is this U.S. hegemony? Now, we're not past the delusions of the United States. If you were to ask Donald Trump, who is a master delusionist, what is your map of the world? He would say the following. He would say, we own all the Americas. That's the Dunrow Doctrine. That we just own all the Americas. And we proved that we kidnapped a president in Venezuela. We own all of Europe. We don't really want it. It's pathetic. These people are useless. But anyway, we own all of Europe. We own all of the Middle East. And we're going to prove it because we're going to go to war with Iran. We own India because India is afraid of China. And we own half of Southeast Asia and the Pacific, so we're surrounding China. So we're pretty good. We're still in charge. That's the American delusional view of the world. Quite dangerous. The other view of the world, and by the way, Africa I didn't mention, because the United States doesn't think about Africa except getting the cobalt. That's all. And some rare earths. The U.S. has absolutely no attention span for Africa as Africa, only that is a place where there's some minerals that we want. Now, if you look at the world from a different point of view, the BRICS countries would say, well, we're basically half the world. We are Russia, India, China, Brazil, South Africa, now Egypt, Ethiopia, United Arab Emirates, Iran, Indonesia. We don't want to be bullied by anybody. And we're about half the world population. The African Union as a whole, that's 55 countries with almost 20% of the world population. It'll be 25% by mid-century. And we don't want U.S. hegemony, and we're real. We're not just a bunch of minerals. We're real. And of course, the other parts of the world are contested, and Europe once in a while even says, do we just want to be pathetic vassals of the United States, or do we have some history, culture, society, different points of view that we would like? So Europe doesn't quite totally accept its vassalage. And I think the fair way to put things is the United States, in relative terms, doesn't have anything like the authority, the reputation, or the desire for alliances in the rest of the world. The Western world is a small part of the world, and the vast truth of the 85% outside of the US and Europe and a couple of East Asian countries is they want prosperity, they want to make good trade, they want to advance in technology, and China will be a good partner for them, India will be a good partner for them, Russia will be a good partner for them. And so this is hardly the US hegemony that Trump and the American deep state imagine. That's how I think is a much more accurate view of the world. The faster the United States gets beyond its delusions, I hope it's fast enough to avoid a war in Iran, which would be disastrous, the better the whole world will be, including the United States itself. The faster Europe escapes from its pathological Russophobia and says, you know, we were led down a path that we ourselves chose to walk. It was a mistake. We need to make our continent safe, secure, based on collective security. The faster Europe can thrive once again.
The chapter of Brzezinski, it reminds me of a speech given by Joe Biden at the Atlantic Council back in '97, where he said that the Russians were worried about NATO expansion, and and they said we might look towards the east to China, and he mocked it and saying, yeah, well, if that doesn't work, you can always work with Iran. And the whole audience just breaks out in laughter, and it's the funniest joke. It's
That's it.
Yeah, it's the inability to predict possible consequences. What seems awfully patriotic, and today it's a very foolish policy, perhaps, which puts us in a very difficult spot for tomorrow. But
I recently reread a famous speech of the arch imperialist Joseph Chamberlain, the head of the Colonial Office of Britain, that he gave in 1897. And one of the notable points of a completely obnoxious imperialist speech is he says, the British realms extend throughout the world. We are a quarter of the whole world. There is no one that can begin to challenge us in all of the future of history as far as we can see. And a half century later, it was all gone. And so these predictions, this bravado, this arrogance, this belief you can run the world is the pride before the fall. And that's been America's and Europe's big mistake.
Well, thank you as always for taking the time. I very much appreciate it. And I know you have a big day ahead of you, so I'll let you go. Thank you.
Good. We'll talk to you again soon. Take care.